till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Ukraine win the Eurovision Song Contest, Mozart gets the decolonisation treatment, and Netflix employees are told that if they're offended by certain shows, they can just leave. This is Free Speech Nation. Welcome to the show. Have you ever noticed that social justice activists all sound the same? And by that, I don't mean they've all got plummy upper-middle-class accents, although they generally do. I mean that they all seem to speak in the same sort of language. They use terms like problematic, toxic masculinity, white privilege, decolonisation, cis-heteronormativity, and a million other buzzwords. And then there are the slogans. Here are some examples. Trans women are women. You are erasing our existence. Your words are violence. That's my lived experience. Now, Robert J. Lifton has described these kind of terms as thought-terminating cliches. Those, quote, brief, highly reductive, definitive-sounding phrases that become the start and finish of any ideological analysis. Culture warriors use these cliches to try and put an end to the conversation. The phrases simply don't invite further questions. And when they do, we end up in this weirdly circular discussion. You'll have no doubt seen exchanges like the following on social media. Trans women are women. What is a woman? Anyone who identifies as a woman. But how do I know how to identify as a woman if you can't define woman? The definition of a woman is anyone who identifies as a woman. And this goes round and round and round. All of this brings to mind the 19th century headmaster Andrew Ingram, who coined this interesting phrase: the Gostak distims the doshes. Now, the sentence is syntactically sound. There is a subject, an object, and an identifiable verb. As such, we understand that the doshes are able to be distimmed, and that such distimming is carried out by the Gostak. Or if you want to see this in dialogue form, it looks like this. What is the Gostak? The Gostak is what distims the doshes. What's distimming? Distimming is what the Gostak does to the doshes. OK, but what are the doshes? The doshes are what the Gostak distims. And this is how these ideological discussions often go. They've come up with these impressive-sounding words and concepts that can only really be understood in reference to other nebulous words and concepts. And you can see why this might drive everyone insane. And, of course, that's the whole point. When people are speaking different languages, there can be no possibility of conversation. This week, my friend Peter Boghossian, who's an American philosopher and academic, released a video in which he is seen attempting to reason with a group of activist students at Portland State University. He's conducting a thought experiment in the plaza, and he's asking people to talk through contentious statements such as defund the police and there are only two genders. And it was this statement that upset some of the students. So at first you can see them on top of the building shouting and swearing at him, but then they come outside and they approach him. Here's a clip.
We're just sort of here to sort of advocate and elevate who might be harmed by a statement like that.
What do you mean by harmed?
Harmed?
Yeah.
Well, people who have been like historically and currently oppressed, right, by dominant systems, patriarchy, whiteness, masculinity, all of the systems.
And I'm just wondering, like, are any of you all like trained professionals in trauma-informed care? Like, if a transgender individual were to come to the space and participate, and then there was a triggering response where they needed emotional support, like, are you ready to support that?
So campus is supposed to be a safe space where everyone can exist freely in their own identities and who they are, and be learning and be talking about these really, really important things within our culture and society.
The idea of there being only two genders is a social construct, because we have this idea of being assigned female at birth, assigned male at birth. Now, I'm non-binary. That's something that I have learned about myself over the last 6-7 years. After I was a teenager, I learned about sociology. I learned about gender as a social construct. And I realized that I don't fit into the box of just a cis woman. Okay, my gender is completely whatever I feel like in the moment.
Now remember that this is all because Peter was simply asking people to discuss the statement, there are only two genders. And the video is worth watching in full. It's on Peter's website. Because what you hear are people who are speaking in slogans as a substitute for thought. As you heard in that brief excerpt, all of them are repeating identical mantras. And all of this was outlined in 1945 in an essay by George Orwell called Politics and the English Language. He wrote, "A speaker who uses that kind of phraseology has gone some distance toward turning himself into a machine. The appropriate noises are coming out of his larynx, but his brain is not involved, as it would be if he were choosing his words for himself. If the speech he is making is one that he is accustomed to make over and over again, he may be almost unconscious of what he is saying, as one is when one utters the responses in church." And that's what we're hearing from culture warriors, just the mindless repetition of liturgical cant. One gets the depressing sense of a hive mind, people who have subordinated their individuality to a bigger ideological project. Whereas most young people still go to university to debate, to be challenged, and to consider alternative worldviews, this minority of activists, they go to university in order to conform. So when you hear these buzzwords, these thought-terminating cliches, it's always worth probing a little more, asking some further questions. Culture warriors don't like debate, because that risks taking them away from the approved script. They might even have to challenge some of their own certainties. But we should never forget that beneath all this jargon, these are intelligent human beings who have simply forgotten what it feels like to think for themselves. My studio guests this evening are Josh Howie and Scott Capurro. Now, thank you for joining us. Did you watch Eurovision? Ukraine have won Eurovision, are you a fan?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm still trying to work out what a Gostak is.
Yeah. It distincts the doshes.
Yeah, I suppose that's what they all say. Everyone's always going on that to me. I did watch Eurovision. I was in the pub with some mates, getting very, very drunk.
Well, you would have to get through that.
Sweaty alcohol. No, yeah. Well, it was brilliant. It was properly fun.
I didn't know straight people did that sort of thing. Go to the no, but you know, go to the pub and watch Eurovision. That's very much a gay thing, isn't it? That's our thing.
Yeah, that's gayer than I would be willing to do myself, actually. I'm kind of annoyed that the Ukraine won. I've had it with the Ukraine. I've had it taking it my front pages. We've given them so much. The U.S. 1.3 trillion. We've had enough. All they did was complain about the tanks showing up late. We didn't start the war. Send us a letter, and now they've won a music thing. What else do they want? The country back? Oh, the list goes on and on.
It's going to be awkward, because aren't they going to have to host it next year? Isn't that
I guess so.
Anyway, but, I mean, but it's interesting that, of course, with this, I mean, I don't see why people are so upset about this, because obviously the UK song was obviously the best song of the night. That is objectively true. But it's all pop songs. It's all dispensable fluff. Yeah, it doesn't really matter. Yeah. And they've always voted politically at Eurovision, haven't they? I mean, isn't it Cyprus and Greece that always give each other 12?
Yeah.
And haven't we now been rehabilitated? Because ever since Brexit, no one's been voting for the UK at all.
It's been really bad, yeah.
It's been really bad.
Yeah, so this is a good year for you.
Yeah.
You did all right. Yeah.
Did all right. Didn't someone say, what was it you said to me before about...
Yeah, it's, I don't know, I just think it's going to... No, I can't remember what we were talking about. I'm too hungover. I'm still stuck on the Gostaks.
You were talking about how the British, you know, we got sort of the highest...
Oh, yeah. Well, I read a thing someone wrote on Twitter this time, choosing someone who looked Swedish was the best thing that we could have done. I think it seems like people maybe got confused and they went, oh, that's obviously Sweden. Everyone loves Sweden.
Maybe it's a glitch then, and maybe next year it'll be like, oh, no, they voted Brexit.
Yeah.
So
It's a long-haired, non-binary guy, right, that was representing the UK.
Is he non-binary?
I don't know. He looks non-binary. I don't know. I'm just being careful. I'm trying to fit in and sound cool. But anyway, it's a long-haired guy that looks a bit like a girl. And it was... he's new at this, right? Because he just recorded a song and put it on TikTok and woke up the next day and had 2 million followers. And suddenly he's representing the UK, right?
He's huge.
That's all it takes. One number.
So why haven't you done it?
I've been at it for
Record
years.
your song. You've got a voice like an angel.
Thank you. People, they don't want to hear my songs. It's weird, isn't it? I'm like a sick kid at home, laying in bed, making up tunes, looking at the ceiling. I'd love to record them and show them, but no one wants to hear them.
Well, get on TikTok. Your opportunity is just around the corner.
I know.
Let's get a few questions from this lovely audience. So our first question is from Ryan. Ryan.
Good evening.
Hello.
Would you leave GB News if you found some of the content offensive?
Well, I find a lot of Scott's content. I haven't left yet. So, would I leave? No. Well, of course, this is about Netflix. And Netflix, you know, after all these accusations that Netflix have gone super woke and, you know, all the rest of it, and all those Netflix employees protesting about Dave Chappelle's show, which was on Netflix, and now the company has launched a crackdown and said that workers who are accused of trying to silence artists, such as Dave Chappelle, they basically said, well, they've issued a memo, and they said, if you're offended by the content on the site, you can go, you can get another job. I mean, this would have seemed like obvious to me. I mean, that's just like obvious?
Well, no, but this is a sort of a thing that's being played across all different companies. I remember when, in The Guardian, when Suzanne Moore wrote her piece basically talking about the interests of women's rights and trans rights, and then a bunch of people who worked there, or actually turned out they'd already left, were saying, we're going to leave now because we're offended.
But they'd already left.
But you'd already left. So this is
it's
like...
easy to say that.
Yeah,
it's an empty threat there.
It's a classic one. And so a bunch of people working at companies have tried it, but Netflix are suffering. Their subscribers have gone way down, and I think you were talking about slogans, but go woke or go woke, go broke seems to be one of them. But it is. It's
just a lot of those shows now on Netflix, right? Diversity in shows is fine. No one's got a problem with it. It's this sense that you're being preached at.
Yeah.
They always shoehorn in these sort of plot lines that are almost like trying to say, look, you are bigots.
They say, if you don't get it, you better get it. Yeah, and they'll also people are reducing their subscriptions to things because of money loss. But also, Chappelle's worth more to them than anything else. They paid him a fortune. They don't care about somebody moving papers around an office. If you don't like it, go away.
Well, exactly. Chappelle, of all people, he's so big.
Yeah.
It's as if they're going to drop him. It reminds me a bit of... Do you remember when Jordan Peterson, his last book was published by Penguin Random House in Canada, and the employees turned up in their boss's office crying, saying, well, you can't publish this book. Like, we're too upset. We're triggered by the book.
Right.
It's like, well, without that book, Penguin Random House is no more.
Yeah.
Right? They're not going to prioritise a couple of, whinging staff.
Yeah, so they shot him. It's
which I thought was a bit harsh.
Yeah, but
they're Canadians.
But a bullet takes care of the problem much faster than a memo. I think people forget they haven't asked people watching Netflix what they think of Chappelle's show, and I watched it, and I loved his set. It's Chappelle does what he does, and the jokes about the gay guy. He said a brilliant thing about gay men are liberal until it comes to skin color, which is true. It was hilarious, and
it was an interesting show. It was great, and it was thought-provoking. Whatever you thought about his views on that, and he handled it in his usual professional way.
I mean, actually, there were a couple of jokes he said that I thought were anti-Semitic, and I wrote a column about it. But I wouldn't say that I would cancel him or want him to be off Netflix. I think the problem is that they're going for. It's not that that they're going for diversity. It's they want the diversity in all of the shows.
Right.
Whereas really, you want singularity of vision, and then you want to go along with that when you're watching entertainment. So when they have their big successes like Squid Games, no one was in the writer room of Squid Games going, you know what, we've got too many Korean writers here, we need to get some non-Koreans, we need to have some representation here. No, that was a singular vision about Korean society.
Yeah.
That's when it works. When you try and do a sort of mishmash Benetton advert in the writer's room or in the production or any of that sort of stuff, it just, I'm not talking about skin color, I'm talking about like all different things. Well, you want to see people's experience.
I mean, you get it. Like, if you're setting a film in modern-day London and everyone's white, you'd be like, what the hell's this? Like, that's got to change.
But anyway, yeah,
sure. Not everyone in this audience is white, as people just signalled to you, but there we go.
Oh, hello, hi, how are you?
Your preconceptions coming through there, Scott. But, but if you're making a film about, the evacuation of Dunkirk or something where it's predominantly white men, you're going to cast predominantly white men. It doesn't need a big interrogation about that.
I'm more interested in diversity economically anyway. I don't think diversity necessarily necessarily is represented by skin color. I think it's more about, you know, your background financially, how you were raised, what schools you went to, and what you think you know as opposed to what you do know. I'm really interested in all sorts of diversity, and you're right, it doesn't have to be in one show, but it would be nice to see diversity without so much, you know, self-consciousness wrapped around.
Well, that's it. It's the self-consciousness, and that's why people get the feeling of being hectored. But it's interesting, the distinction between what you said, Josh, about, you know, you considered some of the jokes to be anti-Semitic, and you wrote an article about it, but that's criticism of the piece, which is fine. That'd be like, I wouldn't have a problem if people said, I think Dave Chappelle's show is transphobic, and this is why. It's that step further of, therefore, I want it shut down, because my interpretation is the only one that counts.
And I've written to The Guardian many times, you know, alerting them how homophobic they are. And they don't really respond because they don't think that they are. No. So there's no conversation, there's no dialogue. Yeah. I'd like to hear them defend themselves against some of the stuff they've said.
Well, they don't generally, do they? If they're attacked of anything, they're just shut down. OK, so let's get another question now from Keith. Keith.
Good evening.
Hello.
Hello. Is it sexual harassment to call someone bald?
Yeah, so now this is an interesting one.
I can't believe they gave that to you, Keith. That is so unfair.
So what I don't understand about this story, and we've probably all read about it because this employment tribunal ruled that calling someone bald at work, in the workplace, was a form of sexual harassment. Now, what I don't understand about that is you know, and their argument was that because hair loss is much more prevalent among men, it's not singularly among men, but much more prevalent, it's a form of discrimination. So whereas I would say it was really rude and unnecessary and all the rest of it, and deeply unprofessional, how is it... I can't make the leap to how this becomes sexual. How is that a sexual harassment?
Well, it was around the corner. It was meant to happen when everybody's, you know, gender identity is mentioned in their defense.
Yeah.
You know, bald men are going to get involved in that, too, because they've been taking it for so long, haven't they? You've been...
Isn't that like...
So brave, right?
But,
are you OK?
But doesn't Larry David do a whole thing about that in Curb Your Enthusiasm, about the idea that, you know, bald people are the ones that get all the flack and they don't get anyone defending them?
Yeah.
Right, so it's a joke, but it's...
I feel bad. I have too much hair. It's too thick. Look at it. I know.
You could share it with Keith.
I know.
What do you think about this, Josh? You got any thoughts?
No, yeah, I mean...
Sexual harassment?
I think... OK, you want to see if it's sexual harassment? Josh, now we got sexy.
Yeah, no, I feel like you're sexually harassing all the rest of us. That's what it felt like to me.
I apologise.
Yeah. It was a step too far.
No, it isn't sexual harassment.
Can't be.
But I do think there is an hypocrisy here where it's seen as, and I sort of read a column in The Guardian again, where the columnist, Stephanie Hewitt, I think, or said essentially, well, it's funny. It's like, well, you know what? It's actually, I don't know about you, but I found when I started losing my hair actually quite traumatic.
Well, that's why it's not... Yeah, but that's
yeah,
why
I'm not saying it's sexual harassment, but it is quite traumatic. And I think taking the mickey... It's seen as a socially acceptable form of taking the mickey out of someone's appearance.
It's like with ginger-haired people. That's seen as acceptable. You can just mock ginger-haired people, and that became...
No, that's fine.
Yeah. The thing is, I worry that there's so many boundaries and definitions now of things you can and can't say that we're just destroying our relationships with one another. All we have left is humor anyway. That's why we've got a couple of jokes.
Among friends as well. Like
exactly. And, you know...
Say that as someone with hair, by the way.
I mean, I've had people make comments about my appearance, you know, most of my adult and prepubescent life, actually, because I was too tall and all that stuff.
Yes, and I get it. You get it. It became... It's hurtful.
Well, I guess it was. But it also became a way for me to defend myself verbally. You know, I was too weak to punch back, or I was too afraid of hitting somebody. So I became, you know, more verbal in my defense. And now I'm glad that I can.
Yeah.
And I just think, people should just calm the F down a little bit.
Thank you for self-censoring that.
You're welcome.
Very important to me. We've got another question now from Rory. Where is Rory? Hello.
Are nursery rhymes teaching our kids to hate animals?
OK, so I know what this is about. There's been this story this week about changes to the nursery rhyme lyrics to Bar Bar Black Sheep. And you'll remember, years ago, there was this big Daily Express article about Bar Bar Rainbow Sheep. And there was a big outcry. But it was ages ago. I mean, we're talking about 15 years ago. It was during that sort of political correctness era. And it was front cover of the Daily Express. And it was like, now it's Bar Bar Rainbow Sheep. It's political correctness gone mad, all the rest of it. Turns out, that hadn't happened at all. No one was censoring anything. It was the teacher was just teaching the kids about the colours of the rainbow, and this was a convenient way to do it. So it got blown. That's why I'm always sceptical when I read these sorts of articles, because I think, is this just someone misinterpreting something and jumping the gun and doing the sort of anti-woke extreme response? I don't think that's helpful either. However, what I will say is this has come from PETA, you know, the Society for the Protection of Animals, and they are insane. They are. I mean, they are just insane. So they've said that like Baa Black Sheep have you any wool. They've said they've changed the lyrics so that the sheep. They explain to the sheep why it's not cool to steal wool. And Miss Muffet has also become vegan. So instead of eating her curds and whey, she's watching the bluebirds play, right? And PETA have form on this. I mean, some of their tweets. I remember they put on a thing about, like, don't assume the gender of animals, quite seriously. And they had an image of a pigeon with they, them pronouns, right? Now, I don't know how they got that from the pigeon. But that's what they... And they did this big list of idioms, like flogging a dead horse that you shouldn't say. I think they said, like... And, like, kill two birds with one stone. They said, why not say feed two birds with one scone? But I mean, like, birds won't eat. So, I mean, that's. I mean, they're insane. So I actually think this isn't a PC gone mad story.
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, I know how the pigeon was. Why it was a they them, because it had no personality.
It was an attention-seeking pigeon.
Attention-seeking pigeon. That's the way it is. But no, this is what they want it to be, and I get it. They want to highlight how delicious lamb is. And how wool is, like, super duper warm. I mean, look, this is what they want it to be. The fact is, no one remembers beyond one line of any nursery rhyme. It's like, Baa Black Sheep, have you any wool? Blah, 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 blah. We're not going to remember the rest anyway.
I think most of us do, actually.
Oh, actually, all right, fine. To be honest, my father had fallen asleep drunk by then.
OK, it's gone very dark. Let's not make it a therapy session for Josh. What do you think about this, changing the lyrics to...
Yeah, I think whenever someone turns vegan, I stop listening. And then I wonder how they're going to get home, because they're so weak they can't walk. Someone's got to drive them. I feel bad for Miss Muffet. The thing is... I do enjoy the taste of animals, and when they eat vegetables, they do taste better. They do. A carnivorous animal.
How have you tested this?
A carnivorous animal doesn't taste as good. They don't.
Really?
Yeah, dogs don't taste good. They don't taste good. No, I've
tried dog.
Yeah, I have. I have tasted everything. Yeah, and they're not good. They're not tasty. They taste really, really bitter. Whereas, you know, a little vegetarian like a deer, yummy, 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 yummy.
OK, I think...
Bambi's delicious. Bambi is delicious.
You're actually destroying my childhood dreams there, so I'm going
I forget you're vegetarian, aren't you?
And I'm vegetarian, yeah, so I would taste good, would I, if you...
Yeah, yeah.
OK.
The best tasting are little babies that haven't eaten meat yet. They taste the best.
For goodness sake, right. Before we go into that whole cannibalism thing, let's move on to something a bit more palatable. So our final question for the moment is from Edward. Edward.
Is the opening of a food bank an excuse for a party?
It's the opening of a food bank an excuse for a party. So this is about... You will have seen the photo. This is the story. The mayor of Dartford, who was photographed at the food bank. It was a photo op. He was opening the food bank, and he was wearing, obviously, gold chains. It's weird, though, in the articles when they talk about him turning up in gold chains. I mean, he's the mayor. It's not like he was Busta Rhymes or something. He's just wearing some bling. Like, he was the mayor, and that's what the mayors wear. But he was criticised also because he was smiling in the photo op. He says, well, we made a joke just before the photograph was... What do you think, Josh?
Well, I think the food bank is actually a great place to have one of those things, because also then you've got the hors d'oeuvres right there.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
But isn't it fair to say that when you're posing for a photograph, you smile, right? I mean, I don't think you have to be morbid just because of... You know, isn't he pleased that they've managed to set up a food bank which is going to help lots of people? Why do we automatically interpret it as he thinks it's really funny that poor people die?
And if he does, oh well. But also, I mean, we elected him. It's our fault. But I think you're right. I think he's just trying to have a good time and show people it doesn't have to be so miserable all the time, you know?
It seems like a strange interpretation.
Yeah, and maybe it had too much sugar, maybe too many Miss Muffins, maybe there's too much... too many brownies, he's too hyped up.
Very possibly.
It's just, look, it's not an achievement, I think, is the idea that we're celebrating that in our society. It's sort of like during COVID, it's like, oh, we're opening a morgue. Look at us, we're brilliant, rather than mishmashing everything. Now, I'm probably going to get some tweets from people going, no one died during COVID. But...
Whatever you say, you're going to get tweets that are antagonistic. But thanks for bringing the tone right down. And morbid there. Just as we go into the break, let's do that. After the break on Free Speech Nation, I'm going to be joined by Chris Mcglade, a comedian who had a critically acclaimed show cancelled last year, but is now about to go on tour. See you in 2 minutes.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents. Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle, and a little bit of levity.
That's the question.
That's two questions, actually. That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. So, my first guest tonight found himself on the wrong end of cancel culture last year when his shows were dropped from London's Soho Theatre over the content. And I'm going to be talking to him about it right now. This is comedian Chris Mcglade, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Chris, thank you so much for coming back. And I say coming back because we had you on the show when this happened around May, June time last year.
It would have been late June, early July, I suppose.
And I think for a lot of the people that are watching now, they're thinking, well, why would someone cancel someone's show? Can you give us a background to what the show was and how it ended up at the Soho Theatre?
Well, my father was murdered in 2011. He was strangled in his house and set on fire. And I forgave the guy who murdered him. Because my father had a very irreverent, un-PC kind of humour and a very forgiving nature, and it just felt right for me to forgive this guy. It was an instinctive thing, and it was like that. And then about 8 years later, 2019, I was in Edinburgh at the Fringe, and I had a panic attack, and I ran off stage and got back to my digs, and I thought to myself, well, I have demons, I need exercising, okay? And I started to write this show called Forgiveness, and it's a comedy about my dad's murder and his life and my life with him, and how all those things intertwined and all made sense on the day that I was told that he was murdered. And we took the show to Edinburgh. I didn't know how it was going to go, but it was critically acclaimed across the board. People were hailing it as genius and all this other rubbish. And it was picked up by a big promoter and put into the Soho Theatre. And if you don't know the Soho Theatre, it's like a very cutting-edge London theatre. They get the people that they want, and they loved the show, and they put me on a 4-night run at the Soho Theatre, predominantly to a very progressive, liberal, I won't say left, because they're not left. I'm left. I'm proper working class left, but these people are like centrists, you know, proper progressive, liberal kind of audience. A lot of working class people came for the first time to the theatre, and I was there on a 4-night run, and I got a 4 standing ovations, and I mean the doors that it opened were absolutely massive, okay? And then lockdown happened and everything stopped, and the theatre was saying that, you know, don't worry, you're still on our plans and blah blah blah, and then it got to June last year. And even though I'd been in the theatre on a 4-night run and got standing ovations every night, and they'd want me to go back on this extended run in the main theatre and co-produce a show and tour and all this. The promoter came back to me in June last year and said, they've cancelled you because you're anti-Semitic, they've been told. And the show is anti-Semitic, so it all revolved around this poem that I wrote called The Right to Hate, which for me is a poem about how working class culture, because that's what we are. I'm working class man, and working class people have their own culture and way of things, the way of thinking about things and attitudes and everything else. And so they cancelled me out, and then Backyard Comedy, through Comedy Unleashed, came in for me, and they said, right, we'll put you on Backyard Comedy, and we sold the show out in 2 days.
What do you make, Chris, of that accusation of anti-Semitism? Because some people had heard an excerpt from the poem online or something.
Well, I
made a judgment.
I get it. You know, there's a reference to the Rothschilds being able to influence world banking in the poem, and that's my view on it. I look at it, you know. And I've explained this to members of the Jewish community. You know, I can't understand how the Rothschilds, as one of the richest banking families in the world, can't influence banking to some degree, right? It would be like saying Off the Curb, as the biggest comedy management company in this country, don't influence comedy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's how I looked at it. And it was neither out in the summit. And basically what happened was these two Jewish guys, after I'd been cancelled by the Soho Theatre and all the furore started, they wanted to interview me. And these two guys are from this this organisation called the Israeli Advocacy Movement. I think one of them started the campaign against anti-Semitism. My agent's Jewish. He's a member of the campaign against anti-Semitism. So I said, yeah, I'll do your interview, no problem. But logistically, we couldn't get it to happen because I'm living up in God's country in the northeast and they were living down in London, you see. So eventually I said, look, why don't you come and see the show? So they came to the show. Andrew backed me up on the show. And at the end of the gig, they stood for 2 minutes with 300 people and applauded me, gave me a standing ovation. And afterwards, I mean, this is one of the most massive things that's ever been said to me. These two Jewish guys came over, very devout men. And one of them said, you've changed the way I think. And I said, why is that? And he said, because you've made me realise that people can say things that are anti-Semitic, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're anti-Semitic. You know? I mean, they'd been through, like, years of tweets and this and that and the other, and they said, you know, that basically, you know, you can say things that are anti-Semitic out of ignorance or lack of education, you know?
Now, that's something else you touch on in the show in terms of the working class communities from which you come.
Mm-hmm.
Will often use phrases of might be racially insensitive, might be various things like this. And so obviously you're delving into these areas of offence and interpretation.
But you see, for me, working class people have a way of talking. We have our own slang. We have our own way of laughing at things, you know? For me, the country is controlled and dominated by this progressive mindset that says you will think like us and you will talk like us and you will find what we find funny, and if you don't, you're this, and if you don't, you're that. And my show kind of like says, well, no. Because the majority of working class people aren't racist, and we aren't sexist, and we aren't homophobic, and we aren't thick, and we aren't gammon, and we aren't mincemeat, and we aren't whelks, right? And it's like, you know, I say in the show, like, you know, we use things like, you know, the Dole office was always the Nash or the number one or the Pancrack, or the Salvation Army was the Sally Army, or the Chippy was the fish and chip shop was the Chippy, or the off licence was the Offie. Do you know what I mean? It's just slang. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't. There's nothing there behind it. So like when you use the slang term for a Chinese takeaway, or a slang term for a Pakistani corner shop, it was just in the same context as using Chippy and Sally Army and all of this. There was never any malice behind it. And it kind of says that, you know, and in the multicultural working class community that my father was brought up in Middlesbrough, in the 70s and 80s, all those working class people, they all used the same kind of thing. There was never any real animosity there, you know. There was never any hatred or malice.
So a lot of the things that you were exploring about misunderstanding between different classes, really.
Well, yeah, and also, you know, middle class people and progressive liberal people have to understand that working class is a culture. Do you know what I mean? It's not. I mean, I was around somebody's house a couple of months ago, and this lunatic said, "Oh yes, my mummy and daddy were working. They had jobs, so I suppose that they were working class as well." And I wish I could swear on this programme.
Please don't.
No, I won't. I wouldn't embarrass you. I wouldn't embarrass myself. This is the first time I've had a studio audience. You know what I mean? Hopefully it won't be the last. But I mean, I thought to myself, are you so ignorant that you actually think that being working class is about having a job? God, you know, I felt like slapping him.
So this is different. I mean, obviously, I'm saying that because we have Ofcom regulations here. But a theatre saying you can't do the show that we booked you for, that you already had on, that was hugely successful, that is a form of censorship. And
but I mean, I said this to you before, Andy. I mean, I forgive the bloke who murdered me dad, so I forgive the Soho Theatre, you know. And I just see it as like the Soho Theatre are as much a victim of cancel culture as I was, you know. Because at the end of the day, I mean, somebody from the Sunday Express phoned me to do this feature on cancel culture and the story and everything else, you know. And they said, well, you know, what would you do if somebody tried to cancel you? And I said, well, I wouldn't care. I've never any fame, fortune, recognition or out. You know what I mean? It wouldn't make any. I'm a nobody. It doesn't make any difference to me, you know. But I mean, the Soho Theatre must have about 40 employees working for them. You know, people whose livelihoods depend on the theatre not being affected by scandal or whatever. So, you know, I understand the Soho Theatre's standpoint. But at some point, I think we as a nation have to realise that, you know, this madness is... It's I tell you what it is, right? I'm a very liberal man. I don't care what anybody is. Do you know what I mean? It wouldn't bother me if you were transgender, gay, straight, black, white, Asian, whatever you are, sky blue, pink with yellow dots, and it wouldn't bother me. Do you know what I mean? But I find these, and it's not the people. I said this before. It's not the people. It's the mindset. The people of this mindset are the most intolerant, unforgiving people. Do you know what I mean? And that was the thing, you know, because when the two Jewish guys came to see the show, and Joseph said, "Well, you've changed the way I think, and you've made me realise that you can." Because I mean, listen, I'm as sick as two short planks, right? I left school with 2 O-levels, well, 3 O-levels, one in English, one in art, and one in truancy, right? I've spent the best part of my life trying to educate myself. When I was 16 years old, I was straight into a steel mill in Middlesbrough, okay, right? And I've tried the best I can to educate myself over the course of my life, okay? So when he said that to me, you can say things that are anti-Semitic out of lack of education or whatever, right? I said, thank you very much. But it was the other Jewish guy, right, who I've become friends with. I mean, he's invited me to his home, you know, on the Sabbath for dinner and all of this, you know. I said, I'll bring him a bottle of Newcastle Brown up. He said, well, I will, as long as it's kosher, right? But he said, but there was another aspect to this, you know, Chris. And I said, what was that? And he said, it's the element of forgiveness. Shouldn't we forgive the anti-Semite? And I'm like, wow. And I started to cry. And I grabbed all of these 2 Jewish lads and I gave them a big hug. And I started to cry because they'd actually got the concept of forgiveness. You know, people do bad things to you, whatever. Forgive them. There's not one person in this room, I guarantee, not one of you hasn't done something bad somewhere along the line, whether it be a big thing or a little thing, right? But it's your ability to forgive, or somebody to forgive you, but also to forgive yourselves so that you don't carry on making the same mistakes.
What a positive note to end on, and we are running out of time, but I do want you to just quickly tell us where we can get tickets for the show, where you're going, on tour.
I mean, I've got to tell you this before. I know you're stuck for time, but on Christmas Day, right, I get a message on Twitter, right? Now they go on Twitter because it's a toxic place, isn't it, right? So I goes on Twitter, And there's this message of somebody, right, saying they wanted to make me a donation. So I said, right, OK then. So they made me a donation, right? I was at Dunelm buying a frying pan when this, when this money went into my account, right? And it was this medical person in a foreign country that seen me on trigonometry, and they said to me, I've got a plan. And I said, what's your plan? They said, I'd like to put you on tour because I saw you on trigonometry, you're talking about forgiveness, and I love the message, it's needed, right? Long story short, this person in this medical profession in a foreign country, a European country, has paid me a 5-figure sum, right, of a substantial amount to put me on tour and eradicate my debts so I can work with a clear head, okay? So I'm now taking forgiveness on tour, full 28-night tour around the UK, and the tickets are on sale now. We're all over the place, England, Scotland, Ireland and Wales, and I've been trying to twist his arm to support me and back me up, as he did brilliantly I may add, right, at the Conway Hall in, you'd say Holborn, but we'd say Holborn.
Say whatever you want, Chris.
in London on the 25th of June. But the tour starts in Hull on the 4th of June, and it goes right the way through to September in Dublin. We'll be finishing Dublin, and if anybody wants tickets out there, go on chrismcgladecomedy.com and you'll find all the dates. Now, wasn't that brilliant for the first time? Eh?
Thank you, Christopher Mcglade. So, do check out the show. Do go to Christopher's website and buy those tickets. Now, after the break on Free Speech Nation, is Mozart's work an instrument of empire? This is what students are being taught at Cambridge. We're going to be joined by writer and academic Mo Lovett to discuss this. See you in a moment.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. Later in the show, I'm going to be turning agony uncle with the help of my panel, Josh Howie and Scott Caporo, and we're going to help you deal with your unfiltered dilemmas. So please do email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk, and we will do our very best to answer your issues. Are great composers, such as Mozart and Verdi, an imperial phenomenon? Undergraduates learning music at Cambridge are being told to decolonise the ear and listen to sound in a post-colonial way. And elsewhere, at the University of Salford, sonnets have been called products of white Western culture and dropped from a creative writing course. Joining me to discuss this now is Mo Lovett, a writer, academic and national coordinator for Debating Matters. Mo, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me, Mo. What do you make of this idea of decolonising the ear?
I suspect it's a very tricky process, and that's why you need a degree from Cambridge to do it.
It sounds quite painful, doesn't it?
I mean, yes, it does. And, you know, you see the reaction, or you hear the reaction from the audience about these suggestions that you could decolonise the ear. You know, it's somewhere between comedy and tragedy, isn't it? It's making for a Shakespearean play for sure. I mean, I think on the one hand it is incredibly stupid. On the other hand, it's incredibly worrying because I think this whole kind of decolonising the curriculum and decolonising our ears and our feet and our whatever, I think all of that is sort of narcissistic in a sense, because on the one hand they're arguing that we can just get rid of 700, 800, 1,000 years worth of the canon, the literary and musical canon of Western culture. So how arrogant is that to kind of assume that that's something that you can just decide to do? And on the other hand, as we know, all narcissists are deeply self-loathing and they self-sabotage. So what they're doing is they're sabotaging art, culture, music, poetry, sonnets, you know, plays. They're sabotaging this because what they are doing, they are kind of making art and culture so fraught with difficulty, so fraught with a kind of new orthodoxy of the way in which you have to interpret the canon, or you have to interpret even new works, that it loses the whole point of art, which was one about expression, freedom. It was also, you know, it's no coincidence that going to the theatre is called a shared experience. So what Chris was talking about earlier about how it kind of divides us from each other as well. We're all sort of slightly frightened that we might have the wrong interpretation of a piece of art, or we might have the wrong interpretation. And you can see, you know, artists themselves, when they're programming things or when they're making new pieces of art, they're so frightened that they're going to be cancelled. So in actual fact, although this may sound ridiculous, and this is Cambridge University, right?
Well, that's right. And why Mozart? Why Mozart? I mean, Mozart, you know, this is, from what I can see, his only crime was being a white male.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is the mental gymnastics you have to go through to get from Mozart to colonialism is ridiculous. But we know that this kind of new sort of ideology is ridiculous in many senses. I think they think it's internally coherent. But it does seem that anything that is associated with that period of Western history is automatically deemed to be colonialist.
Well, it strikes me that these people are seeing the world through this prism of group identity. And then you get people like, there was a video from Sheffield University saying the only reason we study Shakespeare, Chaucer, Virginia Woolf is because they were white. And I'm thinking, you don't know much about literature, do you? You know, that's the thing.
Exactly. And I think the problem is, what I find really horrible about it is so much of this work of art comes out of the Renaissance, or it comes out of the Enlightenment. It comes out of a kind of a period of liberalisation of thought and culture that was about the fact that we can connect to each other on a universal basis, that we're all the same. So what they're doing is that they're kind of reversing that kind of impetus and saying, actually, we're all different because you will interpret things differently depending on the most banal things about you, like the colour of your skin, or, you know, what you've got dangling or not dangling between your legs, or, you know, or who you choose to sleep with. These are not what makes a person.
Yes.
These are just accidents of birth. And what art always does is it has a transcendental quality and also a humanising quality in that it gives us a shared human experience.
Is maybe one impulse behind this just the triumph of the mediocre? Because I remember seeing one writer, and she was talking about how we really shouldn't study dead white males like Ernest Hemingway. We should study more diverse people. And then I read her writing, and I was like, this is terrible, right? So it's almost like the crabs in the bucket. Because she can't do it, she wants to pull down great writers who can.
Well, there are some really good artists, contemporary artists, who speak out about this thing, and you can see that they get what art is, they get what culture is, and they're concerned about this in the way that you and I might be. But it's quite often administrators, isn't it? And it's kind of the people who can't. You know, there's nothing wrong with looking at the canon and saying, is it time to put new writers in?
Sure.
You know, Toni Morrison was added quite recently. You know, I would be happy for Andrea Levy to be added to the literary canon. You know, there's so many people that you could kind of add to the canon, but this isn't about this. This isn't about art. This is about the imposition of a new kind of elitism that, and you know, you see it in what Chris was saying earlier. It's a very top-down imposition of a new kind of ideological way of looking at the world, which excludes people and separates them.
But it's not good for anyone, isn't it? I mean, we end up with this form of cultural immiseration. Maybe if you take this attack on the sonnets, I found absolutely bizarre, which obviously, you know, came from Petrarch through Thomas Wyatt, through Shakespeare. Yeah. You know, it has this lineage. And again, all I can see that they're picking on is the skin colour or gender of the writers involved. And that is completely and that would deprive students of these opportunities to study these really important pieces.
I mean, that's absolutely right, isn't it? There's nothing wrong with revolutionising the format of poetry if you want to. But I'll tell you a good example of why I think it's important that we kind of take the best that has been thought and said and build upon the shoulders of giants. I once went to an amateur choir to learn to sing jazz. OK. Now, jazz is quite complicated. You have to understand the rudiments of music in order to be able to improvise. And in our first session, the session leader said, OK, everybody, let's do some improvisation, and played a key. And you had all these middle-aged women like me who'd never sung before trying to improvise without knowing the rudiments.
Yes.
Right? There's something about understanding the building blocks of culture and the forms and the structures, and then you can play with it as well.
Yeah.
But this isn't about the form of a sonnet, because what on earth could be offensive about iambic pentameter? There's nothing offensive
I don't see how
about
it could be particular.
But it's very much about a cultural mindset, and like you say, it kind of reverts to the kind of mediocre in a sense.
Yes.
And what I find particularly offensive about it is where they say that we have to make poetry more accessible to students of colour because it's too difficult to be accessed by students of colour. I mean, that is racist, right?
Well, I would have thought so. I mean, I remember hearing one charity talking about how we should be teaching black students about Stormzy instead of Mozart because they couldn't possibly engage with Mozart. That strikes me as a soft form of racism to me. It's the bigotry of low expectations.
I agree with you, and what I found really, really shocking is that, because you probably know I worked in the arts sector for a long time, and after that kind of Black Lives Matter moment, I had so many friends and colleagues in the arts sector saying they were now going to examine their own institution for institutional racism. And I would make the point every single time, I didn't know you were racist, right? So there was this kind of sort of weird thing that happened to people that they had to feel seen to be doing something about this Black Lives Matter moment. And in actual fact, maybe that comes from a good place, but think about the consequences of your actions, OK? Because the whole gains of liberal society was the universalisation of the human experience, the fact that we all have something deeply in common that unites us.
Yeah, well, I think that's a wonderful note to end on. Mo Lovett, thanks so much for joining me today. Coming up on Free Speech Nation, you're going to see an exclusive clip from my podcast this week with the YouTuber and LGBT rights campaigner Ariel Scarcella. Do not go away.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a brazier angle, and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. On my upcoming podcast episode, I'm joined by YouTuber Ariel Scarcella. Ariel has been making videos since 2009, mostly around the issues of LGBT rights. In our conversation, we spoke about the rifts in that community caused by what has become known as the culture war. Here's a preview.
I'm like the OG lesbian of YouTube. There was like 3 of us, and I'm still the only one that's still standing 12 years later. Like, I've been doing this for 12 years.
Wow.
Yeah, like I was doing this before gay marriage was legal in the United States, if you really think about it.
And a lot has changed.
Oh my God. We're going to talk about it. We're going to dig deep, because this is just insanity.
Well, let's start with your YouTube channel. I mean, you started back in the day, so, you know,
2009.
Gay activism looked very different.
Yes.
Then what was it about YouTube that you felt this is the way to do it?
I fell into it, believe it or not. Like it wasn't a career back then.
Yeah.
It wasn't like it is now. Now everybody now you ask kids that are 5 years old what they want to be, they say influencer. And I'm like, ugh. Like, that wasn't what it was.
Well, the phrase wasn't even there, was it? Influencer didn't exist.
No,
you know,
we were just like, it was 2009, there was no gay marriage. Kids were like still literally, you know, suicidal. I mean, kids still are, but way more back then.
Yeah.
And I just felt like I had just gotten fired from my first job, my first full-time job, for the same reason they hired me. It's just a long story.
Okay.
Yeah, it's stupid. They didn't have the resources, basically. They wanted to, and then they didn't. They fired me, and I was like, well, I just got out of school. Let me take a summer off. And I started making funny videos on YouTube. And then people somehow found me, and I was like, oh, like, there's a whole audience out here that needs help.
So were those early videos all about
It was just about coming out and silly lesbian things and gay things and stereotype videos and like comedy and like back when it was funny to joke about gay people.
Yeah, okay.
Can't do that now.
And then at some point, something shifted, and because now you very much identify as not being on the left, not being part of what the LGBTQIA plus.
No, I hate that word even. I hate that acronym.
Yeah.
I hate it. I hate it because I'm not QIA plus. I'm just the L.
Yeah.
Like, we're same-sex attracted. Not same gender, that's a whole other issue, right? That's happening, like the complete changing of the definition of what words mean.
Yeah.
Which the activists act like it's nothing, but it's a big deal.
Yeah.
Because it comes down to the law, which
Yes,
is
of
why
course.
in America, have you seen recently, they're interviewing the new Supreme Court justice, the black woman.
Yeah.
The first black woman, blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's great. The first thing that they asked her was, can you define a woman?
Yeah.
And the left was like, bah! No, it's actually an important question. How are you going to uphold the law and women's rights if you can't define that word?
And she said she couldn't because she's not a biologist.
This is where we're at, though, right now.
Right.
This is insanity.
So that's a really key point that you raised about the acronym, the initialism, whatever, LGBTQIA.
Yeah.
And it is, you can't be all at once, you know.
We call the people in the middle or the right, we call it the alphabet people.
Yeah.
It's like, we do not want to identify. Like, it's sad that I had to come out in a video 2 years ago to say that I am not one of these crazy people.
Yeah. So that's that. I mean, I have this experience with a lot of gay people I talk to. They're embarrassed by this stuff.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
all of the many letters. I mean, there are some people add a 2S. Some people add an extra P, an extra L.
Like, what is this? Yeah.
Even Justin Trudeau couldn't say it right. At one of his press conferences, he stumbled over it because it's really hard. And then you have the flag with the extra stripes now and the extra symbols. It's embarrassing for gay people, I think, to see this stuff.
It's really embarrassing. Yeah, I mean, like, it's literally reversed itself over time.
Yeah.
Now we have the same gender attraction, but people can't define what a woman is, what a man is. So how can you define homosexuality? It's erasing our rights.
So let's try and work out what it is that is doing this. When they say being a lesbian is someone attracted to the same gender, what is the problem with that?
Okay, so the problem with that, it wouldn't be as much of a problem if people weren't so extreme with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
The left has become an extremist section, honestly, of whatever the political spectrum. It used to be people like my friend Blair White, if she was a lesbian, which she's not, she's straight, she dates men.
Mm-hmm.
She's a trans woman. If she walked into a lesbian bar, not one person would question it.
Yeah.
Because she does her best she passes.
Yeah.
She looks like a woman. She looks female. She's not. But when you enter a space, it's like walking into a Black Lives Matter, not Black Lives Matter, a black community center, and you're white. People would be like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Like, it's not that it's wrong, but it's like, what, like, I don't, like, what are you doing here?
So then what's changed now? What's the difference now?
Because now you have people that are identifying as women, that are claiming to be women, that look like you.
Yeah.
And people say, oh, that doesn't happen often. It does. I can show you my dating apps. It literally does.
So there's this thing on lesbian dating apps, people with full beards.
Yes.
They look like lumberjacks. a lot of
Literally,
people.
literally. And the problem isn't, like, my problem isn't you identifying as a lesbian. Self-identify,
Yeah.
however the hell you want. Self-identify means only you can see yourself that way. Fine. I can see myself as whatever the hell I want as well. Maybe I see myself as super butch today, but even though I know I'm not, right? In my head, I put together IKEA furniture today. I feel super butch, right? But I'm like, no, I'm really femme. But you have these different identities, people identifying differently.
Yeah.
Like we said, and they're not doing anything to change their outer appearance. And when you come into you're inserting yourself into a space that you don't belong. That's the real issue for me. Not that you're identifying a certain way. I don't care how you identify.
No,
Call yourself a lesbian and date a man. I mean, I think it's stupid, and I think it makes us look stupid. And it's not the actual definition of what a lesbian is. But go ahead, do whatever the hell you want.
Because their view is that their gender is like an innate thing.
Right.
It's like a soul.
Right.
It's something that's sort of fixed within them, and it doesn't matter what your body is or how you present.
But that's not how sexual orientation works.
No.
No. Like, I could prove it to you. If somebody because somebody said, well, it's not about physical appearance. It's not all about physical appearance, which is true, because you have somebody that's blind. We have gay blind people.
Yeah.
How do I know they're also gay? Because they still like male genitalia.
Yeah.
Like a gay man, right?
Yeah.
They still like the way a man feels, the way a man smells. It's not just about physical, it's about the five senses, touch, taste,
of course,
all of this stuff.
Yeah.
So to claim that being even straight or being heterosexual or homosexual has nothing to do with any physical things is ridiculous.
Well, it's a lie, isn't it?
It's a lie.
Yeah.
I didn't know mentally that I was gay. I didn't even know what it was when I was 9 years old. I saw a woman and I was like, okay, like romantically, I would like to hold a woman's hand. You don't think about like how somebody's identifying internally. That's not how it works.
There was a study that the BBC did recently where they interviewed a number of lesbians, I think about 150, and many of them were saying that they were often shamed for excluding people from their dating pool if they had male bodies, male genitalia.
Yes.
So how does that make you feel, that kind of idea?
That's what was. I honestly, there were a lot of contributing factors to me leaving the left, but that was the main one, for sure.
Mm.
When I saw that at this point in history, which was 2 years ago, at that point in history, lesbians are still getting told they have to like men, like male, male body parts.
Yeah.
Disgusted.
Because that's an old
absolutely
homophobic
disgusted
trope, isn't it?
Yeah, you just haven't had the right penis yet.
Yeah. And that's all coming back.
And now
again.
it's just coming back in a little woke package.
Yeah.
And people are all about it.
And then over here we have Stonewall, which is our gay rights movement, which changed that definition, said homosexual is same gender attracted. But I think for gay rights, it's so important that we hold on to this view that it's about recognition of biological difference.
Yes.
That's built in to, that's what we were shamed for. That's why people said you were mentally ill back in the day.
Yes.
And now I see those tropes coming back again as well. I see some trans activists saying the reason you're not attracted to us is because you're suffering from trauma. But that's just a recycled version of
the far right religious stuff.
Right.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So then,
which is the horseshoe theory, right? Like the far left and the far right are closer than they think.
Yes,
that's
exactly.
What they say.
You can listen to my whole conversation with Ariel Scarcella on my podcast, Free Speech Nation, the podcast. That goes live right at the end of this show. That's at 9 p.m. if you're a new viewer. It's just after 8 o'clock. You're watching Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. Let's get some more questions from the audience. So we've got a question from Tim. Where is Tim? Hello.
Good evening. What gender badge will you be wearing at Royal Ascot this summer?
Well, I haven't been to Ascot. I don't go to Ascot. But, OK, so basically, the background to this is the guests in the royal enclosure were previously required to wear name badges such as with the prefix Mr, Ms or Mrs. But they've now introduced a gender-neutral option, and racegoers can use the prefix mix. I think it's pronounced mix, MX. Mix. What do we make of this? Scott, what do you think about this one?
I love the mystery of it.
OK.
I do. I love guessing what they mean by that and trying to figure out if they're married. I think it's really romantic and kind of sweet, actually.
OK, but I don't really understand what that even means. Do you know what this means, Josh? Mix,
Is it Little Mix? Isn't that a group of...
Oh, it's people who identify as being in a girl band.
Yeah, I guess so, yeah.
It's like when you say Latinx, you're not naming the gender, but you're naming that they're Latin.
So I don't understand that about the Latinx thing, because that's not a term used by the Hispanic community.
No.
That's a term used about them.
Yes.
By...
People labeling them what they think they are.
Right.
Or aren't. Right,
OK.
yes. It's really meant to make middle-class people feel more comfortable when they're buying a burrito. I think it's like the word gay. Like,
Yes.
Gay men don't call each other gay. We use other words to describe one another. Gay is for mostly white people to feel more comfortable around gay people.
OK.
They have a word to identify you.
But I think this is a thing that's happening more and more, isn't it? This idea that there are very privileged sort of elites sort of deciding how other people ought to be described. I don't know anyone who self-identifies as mix. I think that's a very minority thing. But I don't have a problem with that. If you want to call yourself mix, I don't have an issue with that.
No,
I really don't.
And the other thing is that they've got very strict dress rules for Ascot, like in terms of like the top hat, and women they have to wear like proper full-on dresses that have like no straps or stuff. But now they're saying, but you can come as the gender that you feel happy with. So you can have a beard and just as long as your hemline goes to here.
Yeah.
So they do have a strict dress code.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they don't mind the beards and the...
No, so it doesn't matter, but just whatever you do, make sure that you have your top hat or not. Or
what if I feel like a dragon that day and I want to have a long tail? I can't wear another skirt. It's difficult, isn't it? You know,
dragon?
Yeah, whenever I do the Star Wars signings, because I was in Star Wars. And,
you never mention it.
I know. I played an alien. Typecasting. But anyway, when I was in that, and I go to the Star Wars signings all over the world, you know, and the guys show up dressed sort of like that. And then the women show up really sexed up with tails and horns, and you can't tell what gender they are. It's really great. And you really see that whole gender neutral or gender mystery thing in action. Yeah.
So that's kind of fun, right?
It is fun. I think this.
But Ascot, though, I mean, it's not the same.
I think the whole play with gender, I think it's playful and fun. I don't have a problem with it. I mean, it is a social concept. It is. And we determine gender individually in different cultures.
Yeah, but that relates to what Josh says about the dresses, and that's our imposition culturally on what men should wear and what women should wear.
My only problem at Ascot is that men can't wear dresses. I wish they could. And maybe they should be able to. Maybe they will in the future.
Be able to wear whatever they want.
Yeah.
We've got a question from Bev. Where's Bev?
Hi.
Hi, Bev. How are you?
Did you manage to solve the popular Wordle puzzle on Monday?
Well, I've managed to solve it every night so far. I've got a pretty long streak. But people don't know this about Wordle. So I don't know if you know Wordle. What it is at midnight every night, a new word... It's a puzzle, basically, and a new word turns up. Wordle was bought recently by the New York Times, and the New York Times have admitted that they changed the answer, which was fetus, spelt the American way, so the incorrect way, and they spelt it F-E-T-U-S.
Right.
And they changed that word. That was the answer. They changed it to shine. And the reason was that the New York Times were concerned about the potential connotations of the word fetus because the abortion laws were a major topic in America. I mean, I don't really understand this, Josh. Why should we change a puzzle response because of current affairs?
That's great. Well, first of all, my run now on Wordle is I've managed to do 300 days and not get it right.
Okay, that's not bad. That's not bad.
Thank you. But really, I mean, I just wish, looking back, Wordle really should have worn a condom that day. Then we wouldn't necessarily be in this position.
See, I think that's when you dive in about fetus. That sounded bad, but I think I think when the issue is raised and it's important, that's when you use the word fetus. Don't pull back from. This is why I'll never have my own TV show because like Remember when Diana died, when the Queen killed her? And allegedly, I'm joking, but anyway, when Princess Diana was passed away,
yes,
I had a TV show at the time. This is why I didn't get a second season, because
of saying things like that.
Well, because I was telling jokes about her death right after, and I think that it's the comic's job to do that, to raise a subject that's uncomfortable and make it palatable so people can cope with it. This is how I deal with stress, and I assume the audience is the same.
But that's where you go wrong.
That's why I'm a mess.
That's exactly where you're a mess, because you use humour to deal with difficult, upsetting topics.
Yeah.
A lot of people, the last thing they want to do is joke about something tragic.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because it. Josh, am I
no,
right?
I don't agree with that at all. I think people absolutely use humour, gallows humour. People who work ambulances or any, that's what they use to cope.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I understand.
Soldiers
that.
in battle are notoriously joke with one another.
Yeah. Okay. We're getting off Wordle here a little bit.
Oh, sorry. We were talking about fetuses. Okay. I know that makes you uncomfortable. Sorry.
It certainly does. Okay. Look, we need another question now. Immediately from Mark. Where's Mark?
Hi.
Hi, Mark.
Would you be happy if an ex-partner spoke to the media about the size of your privates?
Okay, I think we all know what this is about. And this is, of course, the Wagatha Christie trial, and this is an odd one, right? So, because this has been dominating, and ultimately it's Rooney and Vardy, and I've only recently heard of these people. I don't know who these people are really, but one of them was accused of being leaky. Apparently, Rebecca Vardy is very leaky and is often
leaky.
Well, as often said things that are unpleasant.
Oh, I thought you meant physical. Actually.
No.
It's the new trans activists. It's their new word for women. Breastfeeding women.
Oh, right.
I think what...
From others. Leakers.
Yeah, okay. We're going to get in so much trouble tonight. So, look, the point of this is that many years in the trial, they brought out this old article from about 15 years ago where she had cast aspersions on the size of Peter Andre's manhood, right? And he now says, he's now hit back and he's basically said, this has been going on for 15 years. It's not fair. She made it up. He would say that, of course, but it's not fair, is it, for people to start talking about?
It isn't fair, as all these things are. It's as he points out, and I felt a bit sorry for him because I've been taking the mickey out of him all week, and then I've sort of watched it, and he's obviously upset, and you think, you know what, there is hypocrisy here. Like, it's seemingly acceptable to take the mickey out of it, but actually thinking about it now, going back to when he was on Celebrity and he had a growth. No, it looked all right, actually.
Well, famously...
You're welcome, Peter.
The problem is he can't defend himself, because the only way to defend himself would be expose himself. That would be against the law.
Yeah.
So what's he going to do?
Make a sculpture of it.
Okay, so that would be a nice artistic.
Yeah, I think so.
He doesn't really do artistic things.
Yeah, that's true. Autistic, yes, but not artistic. I think he can hire an artist, bring him in, and have it'd be nice. I think. Well, and he's famously big. You're right, from that show that he had done. No, I mean, as a personality, he's got a big personality.
Because I'm just saying, we're not going to start speculating about
this. No, but he's famously...
Like, it's unfair.
He's healthy. He's a healthy young man.
Let's go back to Diana.
Right.
I would have thought that Peter Andre was a safe subject, but apparently not. Anyway, but it's just a media
like
circus.
A cocktail sausage. That's basically what she said.
She said chipolata.
Well, the same thing, like a cocktail sausage.
Okay,
but a spicy one.
Is that so? There's a compliment.
It's a spicy cocktail sausage. It's not bad. Could be worse.
Could be a lot worse.
Right?
Okay, let's get another question now. This is from Tim. Where's Tim?
Duncan.
Sorry. It doesn't even sound remotely like Tim, does it? Duncan.
Good evening, Tim.
Hello. Duncan. Hello.
Indeed. Would you party on down at a mansion paid for by donations?
This is very interesting. So the Black Lives Matter co-founder, Patrisse Cullors, has admitted that she did use a $6 million mansion in Los Angeles, which was purchased by BLM. Now, when this happened, I recall all of this, because obviously people were casting aspersions and saying she was using the money raised by the charity to build a nice new house with a pool, but she's saying she wasn't living there. She only lived there. So I want to just put that side across as well. She says she was only living there. Is that fair?
Yeah, she says she's only living there for a week. Well, she was only there for a week after she was busted.
Right,
basically.
Exactly.
So she could well have been there more, but maybe there's only a week that can be proof that she was there. Also, that's probably why she said they had two parties there, because there's probably proof that there are two parties.
But they're saying that the reason they bought the properties, a massive property, very expensive, is because they need to channel some of the funds of the charity into
but
a property.
it's to protect the black community, a very specific, tiny part of the black community. All the people her.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. But I think she also said that they were going to have sort of like artists' retreat.
Yeah, again, but they said this after the fact. Once the magazine came out, suddenly it's like, oh, this is actually going to be this and that. Like, it hadn't been done so far.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're going to do yoga and stuff. I think people are very anxious about parties now. I think Boris has ruined parties for us.
Maybe that's just it.
Why can't she have a party? You know, tops off. Woo!
Well, I suppose the point is because they had effectively raised this money under false pretenses. If it's true that she's now using the money that they raised, which was supposed to deal with sort of, you know, poverty in the black community or whatever else.
No one has any fun. When you give money to somebody, just give it. Don't expect to know where it's going to get spent, right?
Oh,
so
no.
when I throw money at the homeless, when I hear some coins, I don't say, hey, the next day, what'd you do with that? I don't. I just, I hope they spend it on something nice.
Do you actually throw coins at homeless
Well,
people?
whatever I got. You know.
I mean, that's really patronising.
They like it.
You just throw it, tonight you shall feast.
Right. Good luck. Ding! And, you know.
Goodness me. OK, well, look, after the break, on Free Speech Nation, I'm going to be speaking to Catherine Burblesing, who plays a prominent role in the new documentary, Britain's Strictest Headmistress. So I'm going to see you in a moment. Bye.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. So Wembley has been hosting the men and women's FA Cup finals this weekend, but the area is also notable for Mcglade Community School, which produces pupils who regularly outperform those from more affluent areas. And the school features in a documentary on ITV next Sunday called Britain's Strictest Headmistress. Let's take a look.
Michael, straight. Go. I've got 5 people who have made a show of me today, who have embarrassed this form.
The critics of Michaela speak of it as if it's a gulag. They speak of it as if it's a poorhouse.
Right, Zaran, you've got one detention and you come.
I'm in detention today because I didn't make proper eye contact with my maths teacher when she was teaching the lesson.
Please stand for the headmistress. Stand.
The reason why children in disadvantaged positions end up failing is because nobody said to them, this isn't good enough.
You've said to me, you really want to be at this school. A couple of hours later, you were in the corridors misbehaving. I am so disappointed.
I would get sent death threats and wishes of cancer.
I have lost friends because I work here.
They don't really like Catherine because she's quite outspoken. I think some people think I've joined a cult.
Just got an email from Cambridge. Oh, I got an offer! Woo! Yeah, he's got a place! He's got a place!
The idea that giving children good discipline and excellent teaching and an opportunity to achieve is somehow bad, I just don't understand it.
And I'm delighted to say that that very headmistress, Catherine Birbalsingh, joins me now. Catherine, thanks very much for joining me tonight.
Yes, so thanks for having me.
Congratulations on the film, which is obviously out next week. Can I ask you a bit about the school? And for those who don't know, from the way it's described there, you have lots of rules that other schools simply don't impose. Can you give us an example of the kind of things that you do?
Well, I have to say, actually, that our behaviour policy is probably very similar to lots of other schools. It's just that we tend to always follow through on it. But I suppose the big difference is we have silent corridors, so the children walk in silence quickly to their lessons in single file. Why? Because it means they get to their lessons faster. And when you're trying to catch children up in the inner city with their reading and their maths so that they have a chance to compete with their private school peers at 16 and at 18, it makes sense to be in the classroom for longer. That's one big thing. Other things, well, I don't know. That seems to be the biggest thing. I mean, the main thing is that we follow through on stuff and we hold our standards high for absolutely everyone. So people call our type of school a no excuses school, meaning that when the child comes and says, I couldn't do my homework because the dog ate it or the bus was late or whatever it is, you don't accept the excuse. And I'd say too often in our schools, when you have, say, children from poorer backgrounds or children where their fathers aren't there or children living on estates or they're black or they're any kind of ethnic minority, any kind of reason to think, oh, well, we should lower our standards for this child because the teacher who feels relatively privileged feels bad about keeping their standards really high because they think, well, I don't know what it is to be very poor, so I'm going to let their homework go in this instance. I would argue that actually in the end, you let the child down because they never really meet those standards. And in the end, when they leave school, they leave with lower results and fewer good habits to be successful with their lives.
I mean, that's one of the things that I don't think even your harshest critics could deny, that you do get results. I mean, the pupils do perform remarkably well, and these are largely underprivileged kids. So is this not a system that other schools ought to be considering bringing on board?
Yeah, but like I say, there's a lot... there's a kind of gut reaction against this. And there are other schools that do similar things that are very good on the discipline. But often we as schools will get attacked for this sort of thing, reciting poetry by heart. For instance, we would sing God Save the Queen or Jerusalem in order to inculcate a love of Britain in the children. We often get attacked for that sort of thing. And I suppose that's because the sort of woke left are very anti-tradition and they're anti-strong discipline in schools. They feel that it's oppressive. They feel that you're removing freedom and kind of fun from the classroom. But I would argue that things are all the more fun when you feel safe and secure, when you know that you can reach your classroom in one piece, so you're not going to be trampled, you're not going to be beaten up. And I think a lot of people who comment on these things don't really know the realities of schools with challenging intakes.
Well, what do you say to people who claim that what you're outlining here is just an old-fashioned approach to school teaching?
Well, it is a bit old-fashioned. They're sort of right. I mean, I would say that our teaching methods are also traditional. So what happens is the teacher stands at the front of the classroom and leads the learning with the desks in rows and everyone looking towards the teacher. And some of your viewers might think, but that's normal. That's what happens in classrooms. It hasn't been happening for many, many years. In many classrooms, you will see elsewhere, and not, you know, there are other traditional schools, but in schools that are more progressive, the desks will be in groups and the children are looking at each other. And there is what is called child-centered learning, where the children are leading the learning rather than the teacher. And so in the 50s, of course, what I'm saying was perfectly normal. Nowadays, it's quite radical and relatively controversial. So, and why is it the teacher should lead? Because the teacher knows more. The teacher has a degree and lots of experience. And there's much more of this talk nowadays of, well, the teacher might say, I learn just as much from the children as the children learn from me. And I sort of think that means you're probably not a very good teacher, because you ought to be teaching them more, really.
And do you think something went wrong at some point in terms of the way in which the direction that schools were taking? Is it just that or is it just a general cultural, attitudinal shift towards education?
Yeah, I think that partly it has to do with the knowledge that is taught. So the kind of white guilt around teaching dead white men or teaching anything that's traditional. I mean, these days, there is even talk in some parts of America where they'll say maths is racist, you know, and they argue that 2 + 2 doesn't equal 4 and that it can equal 5. I mean, there is a real push to reject traditional education that we knew for decades and decades, although I would say it has been slow. And since the 60s, really, that has been deteriorating. And we've now reached a stage where where those of us who are traditional are being vilified, and we're having to fight back. And it isn't just, I would stress, that the results are good in terms of GCSEs and that sort of thing. What I'm most proud of is the types of children our children, what they are. So they're kind, they're decent, they're going to live honest lives. They're the kinds of people who, when a plate falls in the lunch hole, other children don't laugh. They run to help them pick up the plate. And that's the kind of thing that I would hope to see everywhere. And of course, there are schools who encourage that kind of behavior. But I would say that far too often we don't realize how much poor behavior exists in schools, and therefore poor learning, and we don't really admit it. And it's not really possible to get into schools. You know, like if you wanted to visit any of the local schools, you try and get in, you won't be able to go in and see the schools. We, on the other hand, have 600 visitors a year. They come and do a tour with the kids and they see the lessons. And everybody who comes says, wow, I can't believe it. Look how happy the children are, how joyful the place is. But people presume that if you have good discipline, that children must somehow be unhappy. And I would argue that it's quite the opposite. Children thrive in order and structure because they feel safe and secure. And it's at that point that they push the boat out and they can be creative and they can come up with their own points of view. But it's only in an orderly environment that they can do that.
Do you think that a lot of the reasons why things changed is because perhaps in the past schools were too strict, there was bullying, there things imposed on kids. They did make some children's lives miserable. And actually, by centering the child more and being attentive to their emotional needs, that it comes from a good place, I suppose, is what I'm saying.
Yes, I think that used to be the case. I'm not sure that's so much the case now, but I think definitely, I think that's a good point. And I think that sometimes teachers, 50, 60, 70 years ago might have bored the class just standing up at the front and reading something. If you come and see at Michaela, our lessons aren't like that at all. They're chunked up. The children, we have turn to your partner where they discuss something, then they feed back to the teacher. There are class discussions. It's a wonderful space of learning. But I think you're right that once upon a time, the more boring teachers would have done things in a very boring didactic way. And so the changes that were made in the first place did make things better. It's just that things have now got out of hand. And so in the end, you've got a bunch of children talking to each other while the teacher moves around the desks as a more of a facilitator of learning as opposed to a teacher at the front leading the learning.
Well, I mean, all of this is very fascinating. I can't wait to see the documentary. That's next Sunday on ITV, Britain's strictest headmistress. Catherine Birbalsingh, thanks very much for joining me. After the break on Free Speech Nation, it'll be time for Devil's Advocate, where my panel argue for and against a hot topic. This week, Scott and Josh will argue whether Donald Trump ought to return to Twitter. You don't want to miss that. See you in a minute.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to the show. So this part of the show is called Devil's Advocate. This is where our panellists discuss one of the burning issues of the day. And this week, our panel are talking about whether or not Donald Trump should return to Twitter. And of course, this has come about because Elon Musk, if he is fully successful in buying Twitter, which it looks like he probably will be, he has said that booting President Trump off the platform was a huge... Sorry, beg your pardon, I swallowed a tooth. But he said it was an incredible misjudgment, and actually it shouldn't have happened. So that's why we're going to debate that here today. First, arguing that Donald Trump should come back to Twitter, we have Scott Capurro.
Yes, come on! Trump is back! Better than ever! I miss him so much. All the jokes, right? I mean, he's really Boris Johnson with, believe it or not, a better haircut. Why should Boris be on Twitter rattling on and on, lying every word out of his mouth, and Trump can't? If we're going to have free speech, let's have free speech. If we're going to say that we are free speakers, then let Trump, let him bury himself. But I think he's going to run again, and I'm going to vote for Trump. I'm going to vote for him. I'm liberal, but I want to be in a winning team for a change, and I'm so sick of lactose intolerant liberals making excuses for themselves. I want a meat eater. I want him back, and better. I miss it, and I miss the wife. I'm worried about Melonia or whatever her name is. I'm worried about her. She's disappeared. I need to see her back on Twitter. I miss the family. I miss the kids. Those evil, nasty, greedy little monsters. I want all of it.
Scott Capurro, everyone. Reasonably persuasive, I think you'll agree. But now arguing that Donald Trump should not return to Twitter, we have Josh Howie.
Boo! No, of course, I definitely think Trump should not come back to Twitter. And by the way, I just want to say here that I am a massive Trump supporter. People don't know that about me, but I'm a huge... and I'm talking like way back in the day. I mean, I was into him before anybody else, like Home Alone 2. That's what got me into him, and it was following his oeuvre from there. I don't think he should be in it because being such a big Trump supporter, I just don't want him to harm himself. That's the thing. And so I'm worried that if he comes back on Twitter, he's going to like cause another insurgency or like nuke Korea or something, North Korea. So I'm doing it to save him from himself. Also, the fact is, Twitter's not big enough for Trump. Trump is too great. You know, Twitter is 240 characters. Truth Social, his new social media platform, 500. Nearly double the size. That's his hands are twice the size of everybody else's. They need more letters to be able to tell us all of them. And because within 240 characters, it's not enough to really get to the nuance of his ideas. It's like, I don't want to just hear about which part of women's anatomy you like to grab. I want to hear why. There we go.
Josh Howie, everyone. I particularly appreciate Josh not saying the name of the part of the anatomy that he said he wanted to grab. That would be bad for us.
I wish he'd write a song about it, though.
Oh, of course.
I'd love to hear a tune about that.
Well, I don't know where I think whether you support Trump or whether you don't support Trump, it's probably quite a bad idea if a major company can just boot off the sitting president. I don't think that's good, personally. But I know that a lot of people who are very happy about him being booted off were the people who didn't support him.
Right.
No coincidence there.
I think Trump is like a mountain. He's just there.
Yeah.
So let him spout.
Is he going to run?
Oh, he's running right now. That's what all this is about. And he's going to win. Yeah.
I did think that Elon Musk actually said something quite witty and actually insightful on Twitter, where he said something like that Biden, who I'm not a massive fan, but I am glad that he's in there instead of Trump, but Biden has made the mistake that he was there to make change when really people just voted him in just to have like a nice, quiet, non-Trump-like existence.
Yeah.
I thought that
we needed a break. We got all worked up. Yeah. The world needed to cool down for a little while.
Yeah.
Well, before we move on to our next section of the show, I just want to bring Josh in about something that was said earlier on in the show. And Josh, I understand you had some concerns about something that was said.
I just wanted to say, just in case anybody was under the illusion or whatever, just because it wasn't sort of mentioned, I should just point out that the whole like Rothschild, Jews controlling banks and the world isn't true. I'm sure that you guys already knew. I just wanted to just make sure. I'm just telling you as a Jew, this could be a double bluff, by the way. But I just wanted to say that is, it's been used as a 200-year-old conspiracy theory. The reality is that there is one Rothschild now, Benjamin Rothschild, who is a billionaire. He is number 1,300 and something in the world. And the Rothschild Group made a huge amount, and it is a huge amount, of but $500 million compared to something like Walmart in America, which makes $500 billion. I think you can agree that $500 million sounds like a lot of money. It ain't enough to get stuff done nowadays. The only thing that $500 million is going to get you is GBNews, actually, and that's why I got this job. So,
Thank you, Josh. It's interesting, though, isn't it? Because a lot of those tropes, they tend to connect with banking and this kind of thing. And there was that mural, wasn't there? That
Jeremy Corbyn liked. He thought, oh, this is really good, and it was...
Didn't he like it by accident or something?
Well, they always like it by accident. Those Labour MPs, slippy fingers.
Yes.
Retweet.
He liked it by Chablis, right? He'd had a couple, and he's like, right. So.
But it's interesting that you mentioned that specifically about the Rothschild, because, of course, we've all heard the conspiracy theory of Jews running the world and everything like that, which is obviously nonsense. But this is very specific.
Yeah, so this is used as people, when they want to take it to the next step, they use Rothschild as like, that they know the information and they know. But if you actually look into the actual things called facts, alas, it's not true.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, it's all right to clarify
Debbie Downer,
facts.
wow, she whiz.
Now, every week we dedicate this part of the show to the world of social media, which is often a mistake because we know what turbid waters they are. But, you know, we always go in there. There's always a few videos that go viral every week, and I'm endlessly fascinated. Every week I think it can't be any more insane than before, can it? But unfortunately, the activists, they just always take it a step further. Now, this video, and it's going to look like a parody, and it's not. This is the latest gender, apparently. Someone is identifying as cake gender. Look, I'll let this person speak for him or her cake self.
Okay, I would describe xenogenders as a gender that could not typically be described with terms such as masculinity, femininity, neutrality, androgyny, things like that. It's more of not how you relate to a particular gendered experience, but more of how you relate to things. For example, cake gender. I know a few people who personally use this. It's typically described as them feeling light and fluffy or sweet and warm, and it's not something that you could typically describe with the terms masculine, feminine, androgynous, etc. Another example of cake gender would be if someone feels like they have different layers or flavors to their particular gender.
That's right. So cake gender people are just very layered, complicated, interesting people, not at all banal people out for attention.
You know, I like how when she said, I know people that do this, and she scratched her nose, and you know that it's her that does this, that she's the cake.
Now you're doing psychoanalysis here.
But I think it's, again, we talked about it earlier, I think it's kind of sweet. I like seeing young people play with language.
Sure.
I like, you know, the reason the English language is so popular and does so well online is because it's so flexible. And why not just toy with gender that way?
Okay, but so this is, I start to think, Josh, that she says she knows a few people who identify as cake gender. I've never met anyone who identifies as cake gender, and I just feel like, am I moving in the wrong circle?
Mate, I'm all over this. And I got to be honest, I'm sort of shaking. I'm a little bit livid. I mean, I thought the Rothschild thing was pretty bad. Now it's like, as someone who identifies as a scone, trying to say that we're all the same and we're light, and you know, and I got a friend who's a Jaffa cake. Very confused.
But this is the problem, isn't it? That they invite ridicule. And like you say, Scott, I'm sure that she's a lovely human being, and you know,
hard to say, really.
You know, but also I don't see how having layers into your personality or being sweet or fluffy is related to your gender identity. That I don't quite understand.
That's a woman thing.
Wow.
Yeah, you know, I think that she's looking for an answer to describe herself, and maybe she hasn't found herself yet. So she likes cake.
Yeah.
She sits alone in her room a lot. She might die alone, and then the thing we'll say about her, she was sweet and fluffy like a cake. I don't know. I don't. It doesn't seem dangerous.
No, I don't think it's dangerous. I don't think anyone's saying it's dangerous. I think we're saying it's ludicrous.
Well, no, I think soon they're going to start like making cakes compete in women's sport. Going into women's prisons. Women are going to eat the cake.
Oh, God. And that's going to be a new thing.
That's a minefield. OK, let's move on to another video. This is of Kendall Jenner. Now, I'm going to say I don't know who Kendall Jenner is. But she's...
What?
I don't know who this person is. But apparently she runs her own multi-billion-pound business.
Hello?
She appears to struggle slicing a cucumber. Is this what she's famous for? Not being able to slice a cucumber? Let's have a look.
Be careful, because I nicked myself the other day.
I don't know, I'm kind of scared.
There you go.
Don't cucumbers have seeds? Oh, yeah, they're definitely not a good cutter, so don't zoom in on me. I'm not professional whatsoever.
Hey.
I mean, she was holding the cucumber in a very odd way, wasn't she?
Yeah.
Like clamping it down and then doing this backward cut. So what? She doesn't have the skill to cut a cucumber. I mean, that's not the end of the world, is it?
It's not just that. I've had sex with her. And exactly the same.
Yeah.
We are going to say you're joking there. You haven't, or maybe you have. I don't want to.
No.
But that's because yours is green. That's part of the problem too. And smells of death. Yeah. The thing is, yeah, I've had sex with her too, and it was very awkward. She turned me gay. No, I think these are.
Why is that going viral?
Because these are people that don't have any interaction with real life. This woman has never. I say woman. I don't know. I'm sorry. This
a cake.
This fluffy cake, this fluffy sweet cake, has never, you know, handled a credit card or driven a car. They have no interaction with real life. So, and she's probably going to use a knife to cut herself. So that when she goes to cut the cucumber, she's completely out of her element. She doesn't know what she's doing.
So why are we so fascinated about this? I mean, these are just very pampered people.
It's like an alien arriving.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
and being said, hey, cut, and just really not having any clue. I think it's an amazing historical document as to what happened. It's like she's just come out of the woods, like she was raised by wolves.
Yeah.
But it can't be that difficult to intuitively work out how to cut a cucumber.
Well, no, but you don't understand. I used to live in Los Angeles, and I worked for people that wealthy as an assistant. I was the scum, and these people
say Rothschilds, okay?
Oh, right, the Rothschilds. I work for the Rothschilds. Oh, the champagne. No, these people, they have no idea how to behave realistically.
Okay.
They're so weak in a way. It makes it clear why OJ was able to take a couple of them down, because they can't defend themselves. They really can't.
I feel sorry for her when I look at that. Actually,
She's like a pony.
Yeah, I mean, I know that she's rich and she's got everything in the world and on a plate, including the cucumber. But I feel bad because we're all mocking her.
Don't feel bad for her because the moment they cut the cameras, about 12 assistants ran out and said, "It's okay, I'll have your cucumber painted out."
Okay.
She's making a lot of money with us talking about her. So.
Oh yeah, probably is.
Well, yeah.
All right, well let's have a look at this. This one is from Michael Gove. Now this week. Yeah, I mean, we know because we've all seen the clip because it's gone absolutely everywhere. It's Michael Gove doing his impersonations or impressions or whatever they were. And it was an interview, and we suddenly got these sort of multiple accents coming in. It's fascinating. Let's have a look.
An emergency budget, which is what some people immediately thought that it did. It is an example of some commentators chasing their own tails and trying to take a statement that is commonsensical, turning it into a major capital letters, a big news story, and in fact, when the Treasury quite rightly say, calm down, then people...
So we got Liverpudlian, we got American. There was another one in there, I think.
Yeah.
There was another one. There were three.
Yeah.
Cocaine.
Cocaine.
So what,
yeah, I saw him shopping a pile in Braintree last night, actually, with a credit card, that guy, I think. Maybe.
Or someone who looked like him.
Yeah,
Let's say that.
Yeah. Jenna can cut that very well, by the way.
Cocaine she can stop, but cucumber not.
But why? OK, so is he just showing off his range?
I think that Michael McIntyre is pretty scared right now.
Right, exactly. But didn't Michael Gove used to be? He used to do comedy.
He did?
Yes, he did. He had a comedy show.
Intentionally?
I think he had it.
No, he did. It was like a sort of a Channel 4-y late night sort of.
So he thinks he's funny. Because no one ever said
I think he's funny.
Oh, right. No.
I see that, and I think that's really funny.
All right, OK.
I mean, you know, he had a go at it. He's making it a bit more lively.
Yeah.
Political discussion can be quite dull.
It's true.
So throw a few accents in. You know, why not? Boris Johnson could do Scottish, Jamaican.
Gotta be careful with accents, though, because
Why?
they can be seen as racist.
OK,
You're not a part of that community. How dare you mock or mimic it?
OK, but do you feel aggrieved that he did an American accent there? Do you think he's mocking your community?
Was that American?
I think it was, yeah.
I thought it was autistic. I think whatever it was, I say you're right. Go for it.
I think
mix it up.
He did a Liverpudlian accent. I think a Liverpudlian would be offended. They're offended by everything. I mean, they would have been offended by that.
They're very weepy.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you can't make any jokes up there about it.
It was terrible.
So, wow, that's worse than his.
Wow.
Do you think politicians ought to be funny, or do you think they should just be boring and get on with the job?
Oh, please, give me Keir Starmer and give me the most boring. Oh, give me boring. I don't just want someone who's going to get on with it.
That's it.
I don't want
I'm a bit old-fashioned like that. I think I'm with you on that. I don't want them to be cracking jokes because that's how you get people who are.
Let's vote for the most boring person.
Because they'll do
that should be the motto of the Labour Party.
Arnold was the best governor. Arnold Schwarzenegger was the best governor California ever had. And,
was he?
Yes, and he impregnated his maid. He made jokes, made films, had a baby. He got on with things. He did a lot, right? As the state burned.
He never tried to be funny, apart from Kindergarten Cop. I don't think he ever really tried to.
No, he's hilarious.
Oh, Junior. Come on,
yeah.
That's a classic.
Junior, is that the one?
The baby.
The one with the baby.
Oh, that one actually became true.
It absolutely.
Yeah.
Didn't he give birth to Danny DeVito in that or something like that?
Well, the truth is that politicians don't run the world. I mean, you know, multinational corporations do. So if the politicians are the mouthpiece, just let them be hilarious.
Yeah, but that's not their job to be hilarious. That's the point. We haven't voted them in to entertain us. We've voted them in.
I think we have, actually.
That's the problem, isn't it? That's where.
I mean, Boris is in because people want to have a beer with him. Boris is in because people think he's kind of funny. In this country, he's the biggest one that they think makes the best.
And he was the most charismatic, you think?
Yeah, that's right.
Just about that?
Yeah, that's
But this is your fault because the Americans imported this presidential style, and so no, it's true. Ever since like Blair, even Thatcher to an extent, it was this presidential style which they sort of adopted from America, and now we're voting for whose personality we like, or the colour of their dress, or the shape of their.
We should vote for non-funny people. You should run.
I should run. Oh, what a burn! That's why we bring it. Maybe I will.
Well, yeah.
You won't be laughing then. Anyway.
You'll be deported.
Deported. Absolutely, as he should be. We've got another video, I believe. This is a statue. Now, this is just from today, actually. This is a statue of the suffragette Emmeline Pankhurst in Manchester. And it's been dragged into the trans debate. There was a women's rights group were holding speeches by the statue. Well, they planned to hold it by the statue, but then trans activists surrounded the statue and decided not to let the feminists near to the statue. This is what happened.
How are you doing? You okay?
I did come for the statue, but if you want to have a discussion, I'm open to it. No? Okay. Sorry, why are you blocking me from the statue? Hello, let's ask you a question. Watch your face. Can I have a look at the statue, please? In public property. Can any of you speak? Any of you willing to have a conversation? No? Do you think this changed anyone's mind? Is that your microphone, Tom? Yeah, it's the wind guard, don't worry about it. It's really just a shame you're not 8 foot, because my arm sort of just gets it. You sure you don't want to chat? Happy to hear why you're here. Blink once for yes, 2 for no. No? All right, well, thanks anyway. Stay safe.
Now, these activists who were dressed in these black masks like ninjas around the statue, which is cultural appropriation, by the way, and they were there, and they were also chanting, "All cops are," and then a swear word. I mean, is this what the right side of history looks like, Josh?
They identify as licorice.
So I misunderstood. I thought they were trying to intimidate women.
Yes.
Whereas actually they're just living their best lives.
Their best licorice lives.
Yeah,
yes.
OK.
That's a protest? Really?
Well, there were more than that. But
right.
there were a few in masks, and there were lots of protesters who weren't dressed like that.
It's not January 6th in D.C., is it, really?
No.
Very small scale. It's sweet, actually.
But they were hanging the sort of trans colours on Emmeline Pankhurst because she's associated with the suffragette movement. And, of course, the feminists were flying the suffragette colours, so it comes very...
I think the real problem is that guns are illegal in this country.
Really? That's a problem, is it?
Where's a sniper pointing at licorice when you need one? I think what's strange to me, too, is that they covered up their identity as if they were ashamed of who they were. I thought the whole point was to be...
But I think it's about intimidatory tactics. I think what they're saying is, you know, we can threaten you. I mean, it feels like a very threatening gesture to me.
Absolutely, and they've really taken the whole Stonewall no debate to the next level.
Yeah,
it's like literally no debate and no words and no anything.
So was the guy on camera meant to be representing a feminist group?
No. So the guy that was filmed by a man called Stephen Knight, who has a very good podcast, which I've been on, and Godless Spell Checker, it's called, and he goes to these various sort of protests to sort of see what happens and just film people. He spoke to a number of feminists that day. He obviously tried to speak to some of the trans activists that day. And that's what was happening. So the people in the black mask were the trans activists.
But why couldn't he call the police to just have them removed or pushed out of his way? Because it's public property, isn't it? They're not meant to be there.
Well, because I don't know if just simply standing in someone's way is breaking the law, preventing him from reaching the statue.
What if you punch them because they're standing in your way?
Yes, that would be breaking the law, exactly. And as you see, there was...
Problem solved.
There was no violence there, and there was a lot of concern that there would be violence here.
Yeah.
But it does strike me that it's become such a toxic situation where people are sort of standing there to protest what they believe in. And I believe in protest on either side. You know, I'm not going to start saying that the trans rights activists shouldn't be protesting there. But I do worry about the escalation to this kind of threatening, intimidatory approach.
It's not an escalation, sorry. It's been part of their tactics for a long time now, for many years. You had lesbians and women's rights activists being punched 5, 6, 7 years ago. This is just a continuation of that.
What I also am worried about, being, I guess, indirectly from that community, I don't see the similarity between gays and lesbians and trans people. Why we're all in the same group, I have no idea. But anyway, we are. So I'm concerned about the fear these people feel for their own safety, this trans community. And I wonder what that fear is based on. It may seem unrealistic to you, but I do worry that these people feel so separated and terrified.
So
do you think, cover up
do you
and
think
protect
the death threats, the rape threats, the threats of violence to feminists and lesbians and women, that's coming from a place of fear?
I do, yeah.
What do you think of that?
I think it's the only place.
I don't know. I believe I saw some photos that were also of that, and there was an Antifa flag flying. So I don't even know if they were part of. They are trans rights activists.
Well, it's just the flag. The flag was there.
The flag was there. Those people were black, masked up, and everything like that. Were members of Antifa, so who I'm not a fan of. So.
But then those two have been conflated. So in America, if you remember the We Spa, that incident, which I think was in San Francisco, the We Spa, Los Angeles, and you had a situation there where a male-bodied individual who identifies as female went into the girls' changing. Allegedly, I think. Well, okay. Let's be careful.
What's the alleged?
Well,
that he identifies as a female, or that he was in the thing.
The woman reporting it had no real proof that someone was in that locker.
Oh no, there were other. That's not. Sorry, there were other people, witnesses, and they gave evidence to the police and whatever.
But was that person in that locker room identified as a trans person?
No. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, no, but there was a man or male body.
Whether that person was identified as a trans person.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Well, let's be careful about that. So that's alleged. That's fine. But there was a male-bodied individual in the women's changing room.
Saying that they were.
Saying that they were, yes. And then a woman complained because obviously her young daughter saw this individual
a black woman,
naked.
by the way, who was then accused of being far right.
Yes,
because,
exactly.
You know.
But then a lot of the protests outside against the feminists were calling themselves Antifa, and they attacked the women.
Dressed exactly like those.
Dressed like that. So there is this weird conflation going on. It is kind of interesting and not at all pleasant.
There was a video a genuinely upsetting video of a middle-aged woman having her sunglasses stolen from her, basically surrounded by people intimidating like that, shouting at her, screaming at her. She was a middle-aged woman there just to say, wait a minute, this young 6-year-old girl who was there was exposed to. Turns out the man, or however he identifies, turns out he was a repeated sex offender. Right. And even then in The Guardian, they tried to write it off that it never happened. I remember the article came out, said there's no proof and whatever. And then...
Did they have to backtrack from that?
I don't believe they ever really did. No, not properly. It came in the UK Guardian, but it was written by the US Journal. And they were trying to say, well, there's no proof, until finally the police finally came out and said, by the way, we've put out an arrest warrant. And there was already an arrest warrant out for this person.
You know, so much of this, too, seems to be motivated, I think, by corporate America. I agree with you on some of that, blaming the US in this case, at least.
Yeah, I was being a bit flippant, but...
Right, no, I understand. Because I think that so much of trans rights are a concern of corporations, because they're worried about women's rights in the workplace, which is a big deal over there. And I think that they're concerned that if they give way to trans people, that they'll have to, accommodate women in the workplace as well. And then all sorts of finance becomes involved.
Well, look, who knows? I mean, I know that we're going to come back to this issue again and again, because it just seems to be one of the most pressing issues at the moment.
It's really about equal pay, I think is what it's about.
Well, before we go down that rabbit hole, we have to get to the unfiltered dilemmas.
Okay,
And this is just what we do at the end of the show, because you guys have been writing in... guys, women, cakes, whatever. Licorice and scones. And you've been writing in with your problems, and you do this every week. And our first dilemma is it's actually a hangover from 2 weeks ago. We had comedian Lewis Schaefer on the panel, and Sue emailed, and we didn't get a chance to read this, but Sue emailed to say, "Dear Andrew, I find Lewis very attractive. Do I need help?" do we have an image of Lewis, by the way? If we had an image, we could make our own decisions on that. Oh, well, I mean, look.
Well...
I mean, he is dapper.
That's good lighting.
Does she need help? I don't think she needs help. I think she's got very good taste.
He's a good-looking bloke, and he's got that sort of very solid American physique that just comes from having lots of hormones injected into meat.
Yeah, but he has that meat diet, doesn't he?
Exactly.
All meat diet.
Any vegetables.
None at all.
No plant-based food at all.
Right, we've got another dilemma here. This is from Tim in West London. Tim says, I recently changed jobs and now I'm dating someone in the office who I actually used to work alongside at my previous employer. I didn't rate her then, but now she's blown my mind. Should I tell her I never used to think she was that great, or just keep it to myself? I don't think you should be rating people anyway, should you? I mean, it's a bit dehumanising, isn't it?
Well, it's fun to say, look, I've been watching you for a while, although that sounds creepy too. It's fun to say I've been keeping track of you, and I feel like we've grown closer, and I'd like to, have you blow my mind.
Very, very diplomatically put. What do you think should happen?
Psycho.
Yeah.
Okay, well, look, thank you for joining us. We've got to go now. Thanks for joining us for Free Speech Nation. We'll see you next time at the same time, 7 o'clock on Sunday. Bye.
On Mark Dolan tonight, my Mark Meets guest is showbiz legend Christopher Biggins. I'll be talking about his 5 glorious decades entertaining the nation. In The Big Question, do we make too much of a fuss of mental health? Is it time for a return to the British stiff upper lip? And as Margaret Thatcher's statue arrives in Grantham, in my big opinion, I'll be giving my verdict on the legacy of the Iron Lady. Plus, Britain's incredible performance at Eurovision suggests the world has finally accepted Brexit. Sam Ryder, whose song was called Spaceman, proves the sky's the limit for global Britain. See you at 9.
Looking ahead to tomorrow's weather, and the UK looking muggy and rather cloudy with outbreaks of showery rain, locally thundery and moving north. Let's look at the detail. So cloudy, murky and muggy for Monday morning in the southwest of England. A few bright sunny spells, the odd shower possible as well. The southeast of England also feeling muggy, rather cloudy, some early bright or sunny spells and the odd shower. A similar story for South Wales. A murky, muggy feeling with the hill fog patches in places and limited brightness with some showery rain for some. Showery rain also possible across the northwest of England, a rather cloudy start to the day, patchy hill fog and a muggy feel as well to begin the day. Rather cooler in the northeast of England, a little less muggy as a result, but otherwise little change in the expected weather, cloudy with showery outbreaks.